In this video, I'd like to address a bit of an elephant in the room. The main age demographic of this channel is people in their kind of 40s, midlifers. I'm one, I'm 47, and I'd like to talk about what worries and fears people have in their midlife to begin with. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about possibly one key element of a solution to those fears and worries that a lot of us have. So, by definition, a midlifer is somebody who really is halfway through their life. If we get to kind of 80s or 90s, I'm in my 40s, I've pretty much lived as much as I'm going to live in the future, right? If I'm lucky. It's particularly a time of reflection on the life before and looking forward on the time in the future, and that obviously causes a bit of a problem with living in the now. And perhaps that's a video for another time. I'm not going to lie, I am extraordinarily lucky to live where I live. You speak to ChatGPT about the main worries for midlifers. There are 4 of them. These are the 4. We'll go into them in a little bit more detail, talk about my experiences of them and a possible solution. They are: number 1, our mortality; number 2, finances; number 3, our purpose; and number 4, our relevance. So let's break these down. First of all, our mortality. Yes, we're gonna die. There's no doubt about it. However, as we get closer to the end of our lives, we start thinking a little bit more about it. Now, from my own experience, I haven't exactly lived my life in a fashion that's been geared to maximising that. However, in the last 3 or 4 years, that's most definitely changed. But here's the thing regarding that. Our health and mortality really comes down to not sparking yourself out on unforeseen trees on a trail run in the middle of nowhere. It's a bit like putting your seatbelt on. It doesn't have any negative impacts putting your seatbelt on. And if a truck hits you at 60 miles an hour, it isn't going to do a huge amount. However, at a low speed impact, it's probably going to stop you going through the windscreen. Maybe without even any major repercussions. The point is, you'll have controlled the controllable and mitigated against a very low level threat. And that's the way I see things. There are simple things I can do with exercise, mental and physical, strength training, the way I eat, that may avoid obvious things. And if I end up dying or living the last decade of my life in suffering because of something that I could have avoided, then more for me. I should have put my seatbelt on. However, sometimes you just don't see that truck coming, and that, folks, is quite literally life. Next is finances. This is a tricky one for me to discuss, in as much as I'm definitely not money driven neither. Bex or I have ever really been overly concerned about having tons of money in the bank. We get by, and at times we've really struggled, and there have been times when I've had to resort to doing crappy jobs and selling stuff that I'd rather have kept. We kept our head above water, and essentially we live to our means, but we are in no way rich. In the past, it's been a huge source of suffering and mental health issues, but more recently it's just a general concern for most of the population. At our age, we tend to be fearful about how we're going to cope as we get older. Well, the only provision we've made for that is our property. But one thing I will say about that is, don't be deceived by the veneer of others. Some people are very driven by money, but an awful lot of cases, it's the summer is a good example, like family holidays. I can't help but look at some people's social media holidays and think, wow, like, you are an amazing parent, you've taken your family on this amazing experience. But seemingly 30 to 35% of all family holidays are paid for on credit. And I've read about how many people actually don't enjoy their holidays because they're seriously worried about how they're going to pay for it. Now, other than our mortgage, we don't have any credit cards or anything like that. And we're very fortunate that my stepmom and dad live in France and we can have our holidays there, and we do everything on a shoestring. I genuinely don't think we have any less of an experience, but at least I can actually enjoy the holiday. But out of the 4 things, finances, I'd say, yeah, probably the one that I'm most fearful of. mainly because I haven't spent all my life amassing hundreds of thousands of pounds in the bank. But that neatly brings me on to number 3, purpose. 3 and 4 sound similar, purpose and relevance, but purpose is what have you done with your life? What have you been up to get to this point? Now I'm going to try and simplify this. There are some people who have picked their career paths to negate number 2, finances. They've done it because maybe their family or their perception of what they were supposed to do would generate a good level of money. Most of those jobs corporate, probably quite ruthless and business orientated. I've never been in that world at all. As somebody who has spent their entire life fighting to maintain a living as a creative, providing for 2 kids and keeping a roof over our heads and food in our mouths, I'm very proud of that fact that it has been tough. There are other people that have worked their way up the corporate ladder. This is my observation of that. When people find out what I do for a living, so many of them say, oh, I used to play drums, guitar, keys, whatever at school. I wish I'd kept it up. I really miss that, but I did it because I got married, I had kids, started a career. It's safe to say I've never spoken to an accountant and said to them, oh, I really regret my career choices, I wish I'd done what you did. But I often have that discussion the other way around. I have a thirst for knowledge and I love sharing that, and I love making things that didn't exist before that convey an idea and an emotion. That's what drives me. I'm very proud of the fact that a lot of people would like to do what I do, and I probably wouldn't necessarily like to do what they do. You look at the 5 regrets of the dying, quite a few of them are about not making a career choice that they wish they had and not really fulfilling what they perceive as being their purpose. Humans, man. Humans are designed to make stuff and create things. It's what makes us happy. You know, apologies for being out of breath on this run. I think I'm going to wait until I get to the top of the hill to carry on. However, oh, look at that view. And finally, relevance. As you get older, times move on. When you're younger, you're on the cusp of all things new. Think about when we were teenagers and mobile phones came out. We were all over that stuff. But as we get older, it becomes a bit harder to keep pace, especially at the pace that tech and everything is moving on. But that's what the 4th concern is. Maybe you're in your 50s and you're starting to get passed over for promotions at work because there are younger people that they've got their finger on the pulse a little bit more than you do. And again, I consider myself fortunate in this regard. I teach at uni. It's my job to stay more than relevant, to try and be ahead of the curve. But ultimately, I bloody love it anyway. We live in a definitely scary but also very exciting world. And as this channel sort of shows, it blows my mind all the stuff that goes on with social media and technology. And I think on an awful lot of occasions, it's fear that stops us going forwards. We all know older members of our family that, you know, when contactless cards came about and stuff like that, they were very reticent to move away from their checkbooks. So when I review those 4 biggest concerns according to ChatGPT, if you stay relevant with your tech, you'll be using it, then I feel very fortunate that I don't feel that terribly terrified of all of those 4 things. I'd say finance definitely scores top of the list for me. It is a concern. It's something I'd like to get under control, but ultimately, when I read the 5 regrets of the dying, and I don't mean the book, I haven't actually read the book because I feel very fortunate that having read through what those 5 are, none of them actually applied to me. I'm going to walk because you're probably bored of me breathing in between speaking at the moment. Nearly fell again. As I said, I've fought long and hard to have a job that explores my emotions and really gets those out in the open, and that seemingly is one of the biggest problems. However, my life has not been without its ups and downs. As those of you that subscribe to the channel will know, I've had some extraordinarily dark times, as we all have. It's just that we all have them for different reasons. Now, the first thing I want to tell you is that I also asked ChatGPT how many people of our age are worried about those 4 things. And it was like, as it broke it down, anything between 60 and 90% of the population have worries about those things. It's all of us, gang. You're not alone. It feels like you are at times. But But I promise you, you're not. There are so many people out there that have the same worries, and it fluctuates. You have good days and bad days. And some people have really long, protracted periods of fear and worry. And for others, they kind of manage to negate it somehow. And that's what I want to spend the last little bit of this video talking about. All of the darkest times of my life and all of the bad choices that I've made as a result of those have come down to a lack of control. Now, sometimes it's because I haven't lacked the courage to face up to the problem and take control and think of a solution. And at other times, it's because there are just some things that are out of your control. So that brings me to my first point. If we're going to talk about control as being a solution, it's about knowing about controlling the controllables. What Dave Brailsford talks about with marginal gains. All the little things that you can control, if you take control of them, they amass to be a big thing. Whereas there are just some things that you can't mitigate against. Go back to the seatbelt thing. That is a small thing you can do to control your safety. Has no negative impact on anything, but it won't mitigate against bad driving from a lorry driver that crashes into you at 60 miles an hour. There's nothing you can do about that. All you can do is mitigate the tiny little things. So control the controllables. Addictive behaviours are driven by a lack of control elsewhere in your life. I did a mental health first aid course for work going back some years, and it blew my mind when the person taking the course was explaining about it doesn't matter what addictive behaviour it is, whether it's self-harm, drug prescription, illegal prescription drugs, alcohol, pornography, it doesn't matter what it is all about the process of somebody taking control of something in their lives where there are other areas of their life that they can't control. So when it comes to addiction treatment, one of the biggest problems you have, let's take something like an eating disorder. You can force feed somebody or make them eat something, but ultimately there is a reason why they have that eating disorder, and without solving that problem, you're not going to get anywhere. So control is the key thing here. My suggestion to you, and I'm going to do this too, I'm going to go through those four things: mortality, finances, purpose and relevance. And I'm going to look at some small things I can do to take those under control. I've been focusing mainly on mortality, haven't I? If you've been watching the channel, I've been looking at what I'm eating. I've got a big ship to turn. I've had decades of not looking into that stuff. So I've got to work very hard, very fast. But for most of you out there, you can do little things to make a big difference. You've got some control over that. Now, it might change your fears and your worries about your mortality and, you know, what the remaining decades of your life will be like. And it'll be the same with finances, mainly for me. What little things can I do that are basically putting on a seatbelt? Are there little things I can do to kind of soften that worry a little bit? Purpose. I think that there are tiny little things people can do with purpose, but if you do feel like maybe you've spent your life kind of working in a corporate environment and that you regret not kind of exploring your creative tendencies, that is the place to look first. It doesn't matter if you start a YouTube channel and upload videos that literally nobody watches, or you write snippets and ideas down. Journaling is a great starting point for that, because free writing and just putting your thoughts on paper are incredibly cathartic. No one ever need read this stuff. Pick up a guitar, go and have those piano lessons that you wish you'd had. It's also good for your mind to learn those things, but try and be creative in some way. That's the third thing. The relevance thing is possibly more to do with courage than anything else. I guess it depends what you're into, but wherever you feel like you're shying away from things like AI, for example. I know an awful lot of people our age, because we grew up with the Terminator. We're worried about AI, but you know, have you actually done a deep dive on it? Maybe what I'll do is in the description below, I will put a link to a Diary of a CEO podcast with a guy who explains and talks about AI in an interesting way. So if AI is something you're fearful of in terms of relevance, then maybe watch that video. But what I'd really like you to do, because most of my videos are about telling you things, I would really appreciate in the comments below if you could just let me know what your fears and worries are, or maybe what you're doing to negate those things. So maybe we could try those ideas out as well. But the most important thing to take away from this are two. One, you're not alone in those fears, whatever they are. They will fluctuate. Some of you will be in a much darker place. Some of you will have overcome those, but you aren't alone. And the second thing is that taking some control over those and not burying your head in the sand, I promise you that is the pathway to having a better headspace. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me on this run and a bit of a sit and a chat in the woods. And I will see you on the next video. And in the meantime, make sure you look after yourselves and all those beautiful, wonderful people around you. Goodbye for now.